Alright, I'm doing a Blast Rivals 2026 Season 1 recap. So I just want to make a video talking about like kind of how the tournament goes and like kind of the expectations moving into the season because of these results. I think some interesting results happened, some interesting teams showed some pretty cool things there. So we'll talk about them, and then obviously some stronger teams showed some pretty disappointing results. Um, I would say it's really only two teams that showed, three or two teams that showed disappointing results, but the rest were pretty interesting. It was a tournament I would even describe as like an upset tournament because a lot of upset victories actually happened. Um, and obviously the expected result happened with Vitality winning. I feel like most people know that by now. Zywoo claimed another MVP. Um, I realize now I probably look like a bit of a bum because I haven't shaved, but it is what it is. So yeah, let's get into it. So I have the stats. Here are the results, right? So MVP, all that. But we'll just go through the teams very quickly. We'll talk about the some of the things that happened, and then we'll wrap it up, right? I feel like Vitality and Navi are probably the two conversations I want to have the least because they're the least interesting to me. I think Navi and Vitality they showed good things, but we're gonna go in reverse order from teams that got eliminated first, and then go back to basically who won and who got second place, right? But everybody knows who won and got second place. So first team is Foot. They didn't have much to gain or lose at this tournament. They were playing with stand-in. Lonks couldn't play because of some emergency or medical reason, so he couldn't play. First match they played against Vitality, it was actually rather close. I feel like they actually could have won that Vitality game pretty convincingly. Had they just closed it out because they had a pretty decent chance. I think Vitality were playing pretty bad. I think they had like something like a 12-10 lead, 12-9 lead, and they just couldn't close it out. It was like one round and it would close out the series and Vitality would have been in the lowers, and Foot would have made it to the playoffs instantly. But again, didn't do it. Vitality closed in OT, and unfortunately so because Demon actually played really well. Demon played really well this entire tournament. I think he had a 1.13, and he played pretty good, but they don't win it. They then go verse against Astralis. Astralis are looking just lost to G2, and then Astralis beat them. Astralis Foot, they've versed each other I don't know how many times this year. It's probably something like 7 or 8 times this year. Um, it's a one of the more interesting, I guess you would call it rivalries of this year because I think both teams are on a similar trajectory with their players improving and getting better, right? New player in Ryu, right, coming up to the scene, versing his counterpart in Jugas. They actually play relatively similar positions. I would say Ryu is a bit more supportive, trade fraggy, where Jugas is more hard work, like proactive. But they're both get up to things, and I think they're both good players. Even though I don't, we'll talk about them later. But Furia also won the last place. They came seventh to eighth. Is a really poor tournament from them. I mean, they should be in the playoffs bare minimum. But on top of that, should probably be in the semis, right? Like, I have no reason to lose and go out last place like they did. I understand 18 playoff random shit can happen, but even then, you shouldn't be losing to fucking teams like um, Gamer Legion or FaZe like at all. Like you just shouldn't. FaZe with a brand new IGL, brand new player, right? So yeah, really poor tournament. They've been getting worse and worse and worse throughout the year. Krakow was their highest peak where they made a grand final, and since then it hasn't really been anything impressive, right? Rio, you could argue they played a semi-close series against Vitality, but Vitality still won it in the end, even with Yuri playing insane. So it doesn't matter. So they lost first to Gamer Legion in a three-map affair, and then they lost to FaZe in a three-map affair. And the way FaZe won it on Nuke was wild. We'll talk about that later. But FaZe, this is FaZe with Twist IGLing, brand new coach, and brand new player in Netu, right? Like, you shouldn't be losing. You've had almost a year together, but they lost it. Anyway, Yuri has been really fucking poor, like 0.78. He posted this tournament, but he's been poor the entire year. Um, if we go to his stats, I think he is like maybe the lowest rated player at this event by far, which is kind of criminal. No, Coolio's the lowest, Symmetry's the lowest, and Yuri is right there with him with 0.78. right? 0.67 KD. Haha, funny number. But like, just like, what the fuck happened to Yuri? Like, Yuri was actually borderline a top 20 player and was actually the reason why Furia, when they were the full Brazilian lineup in 2025, he was actually the best player on that team for a period, right? You could argue it was Quesarado, but I would arguably say it was Yuri for 2025 in the first part because he was the most consistent when they were all Brazilian still. They still had, I think, Cello and Skulls. So I think he was actually the best part because Case Rado seemed like he was coasting a bit, which Case Rado occasionally does, but it's not very often. But Yuri actually seemed like he stepped up, and then coming into the later part of 2025, he was the fourth best player on the team, right? Because you had Yakinder, Molodoy, and Case Rado. They're obviously going to get the most amount of space, uh, in that, in the whatever order you want to put it. But Yuri was actually delivering. He was overperforming as an anchor. He was dropping like 1.20s at like tournaments and winning them events. And when you have that, like, you should win everything. But he hasn't even been just stable. He's just been bad. So this is another new low for Yuri, which kind of sucks because I like Yuri. Molodoy is still very like inconsistent, highs and lows, great games, bad games. It fluctuates like way too much for an opper. Again, sophomore slump is a term used a lot because typically players who create a bit of an image and then kind of get more understood, more counter-stratted, and people start understanding how to play against it, and they need to reinvent themselves in a way. Not like reinvent, but they need to like add more tools to their arsenal, and sometimes that's hard for new players to do. So I think that's what we're seeing with Molodoy. He's very known for repeaking, and I think people are starting to understand it. On top of that, he's just missing more shots than he used to. Could argue it's Animagraph, but I don't think Animagraph is. If anything, Animagraph should help uppers, not hurt them that much. But maybe it's hurting him when he peaks in angles, so I don't know. And then mid rounding is still lackluster. I feel like the mid rounding, like Fallen has almost like, I feel like kind of, he's not coasting, but he's not like trying as hard with the mid rounding. I feel like mid rounding in the second part of 2025 was just incredible. They were always able to get up, like make these genius fucking mid rounds that would win them like one or two rounds. But those one or two rounds, they would do so much for this team, right? They would help them actually be able to close out series because they were the most important rounds they need to win during the mid round. Even when they were on force buys or they were on like full buys and their money would be broken, they would make these genius mid rounds and just win series off of it. And it feels like that's lacking with Furia still. Uh, Now talking about G2. G2, mediocre result, but probably edging on a poor tournament result. I feel like they should have taken care of definitely the team they lost to in the quarters FaZe more convincingly, but they didn't, and they end up losing. But first, they took care of Astralis very convincingly. It just seemed like the players were better. Ryu had a horror series. Like, Ryu was awful that series, and he dropped like 0.43 or something. So they just couldn't. They just dominated, right? Heavy God, some Pious. They were doing very well. Pretty sure that series here. I can go check. Actually, hold on. Let me go check because I actually kind of forget it a little bit. In that series. Yeah, it was Heavy Gods and Pious, Hunter Nurse. All right. Yeah, Ryu 0.43. 5 kills across the entire map. I think 2 kills. Yeah, it was a really rough series from Ryu. I think Ryu does struggle with nerves quite a lot. So I think that's why we see Ryu sometimes just like kind of just disappear. Like some games he's really on, some games he's not. And with the games he's not, he's super noticeable when he's gone because he just doesn't kill anything. He doesn't hit shots, he doesn't hit headshots. He just seems so uncomfortable sometimes. So that's very noticeable. But we're talking about G2 here. Um, so let's try and focus on that. Played 2 close maps against Vitality. The maps were actually pretty close, the first two, and then the third one was a blowout. I'm pretty sure they played D2. They just got 13-5'd or something. It was like ridiculously, like just not even close when you watch the series. And then lost to FaZe in quarters. And the way they lost to FaZe was actually like, I wouldn't say it's embarrassing, but I would say it shows like FaZe still has that like mental edge over teams where teams can never count this team out, even when they look like they're down and out. Like FaZe, the way FaZe like FaZe should have lost this series, but it doesn't even matter because FaZe just like do the bullshit thing again. And it looked like they just crumbled. It looks like all the players, when you saw their faces in the camps, I'm doing face analysis now. When you looked at their faces in the moments in between, it just looked like they kind of gave up. It looked like as soon as they got to OT, it was over. Like FaZe had it in the bag. Um, Like they actually had the series on a force buy, They force bought. They didn't full buy. They had it on a force buy, and then frozen 4Ks and wins this, like just saves the series. It was wild. They probably should have lost. But anyway, bad tournament for Mattis. Mattis is a player I really like. He's borderline a top 20 player this year. But on T side, he's just wasn't running. I think he had a 0.73 across the event, but across the overall rating, he had a 0.87, which is really important because he's your hard entry. He's your X Factor guy. He's a guy going into bomb sites first. So you need to be able to get him, you need to let him like off the leash because when he's on, he's really on. This guy is so incredibly sharp and so incredibly like mechanically gifted. He's like I compare him to the modern day config. He is the modern day config. He is this hard entry that you send first, and he's so confident he's just gonna take duels and he's gonna win them. You know, like when he's on, he wins the duels. Doesn't matter who he's against, he's gonna win it. But this tournament just not a very good tournament. But like he's had two bad tournaments. I think it was this and Kluge, and but other than that, Mattis has been incredible. But this tournament just didn't show up. Sampaius reinvigorated. He's looked great since Rio. I think this was. I've seen. I may be thinking about keeping Sampaius on G2. I actually don't think Sampaius is a problem if he's able to perform like this. If Sampaius can continue to do this or just do 80% of what he's doing right now, I think Sampaius can stay on this roster 100%. You don't have to replace him with Klim. I've been a guy who's been saying get Klim on the roster, but I'm fine with if they want to let Klim develop a bit more in MIBR and let him continue to like work out his game because I think Klim, even though he would be a firepower upgrade and he's a legit prospect, they want to keep Sampaius because of all the intangibles. He's a secondary voice. He probably offers some ideas. He's probably like more of a calming presence, right? He doesn't get tilted. So I feel like these things are really important. So yeah, I think Shichu could keep Sampaius if this roster keeps working at it. Again, they haven't had nerfs for long. They've had nerfs for like 2 months or something, which is not long. So I'm willing to give this roster some time to breathe and to let it work on its own and let Saw get his system implemented because the same thing happened in Heroic, right? When you watched Heroic, when they had LNZ to near youngster xCloud Sampaius, it took a while, right? Like at first the results were decent, but as they continued developing, I would argue they were like borderline a top 10 team. They were like right under that top 10 team like level, right? They maybe weren't top 10, but they were like right there towards the end of the season, right? Obviously failed in stage 2 of Austin, but in my opinion they should have made stage 3 and maybe even made playoffs if they played to their normal level. Astralis, poor tournament. I'm just going to say it. I've been really hyped on Astralis this year. Stare has been so good. Fuzi has been maybe one of the best pickups of the season, considering this guy wasn't on anybody's radar for some reason. I don't know why. This guy was incredible on 9 and Wildcard and continued to improve year after year after year. Mr. Worldwide, we call him because he's been literally everywhere to play CS. First, they lost to G2. Ryu, Horror Series, 0.43. We already talked about it. But Sarah and Hooksy were the only two, like, giving them a chance in some of the rounds. Yabi, quiet tournament, just not delivering anything. Then they took care of Foot with a stand-in pretty convincingly. Obviously, they're going to beat a team with a stand-in. Lost to Gamer Legion in quarters. Shouldn't lose to Gamer Legion. I don't care. They have more experience at tier 1 events than them. I think they even have better players. When I look at the player names, I think convincingly they are better players. I wouldn't say it's convincingly is a bit much, but I would say they have better players on paper and they have a better caller in theory, but that's not how it worked out. And they lost a unbelievable. They choked Inferno so hard, 12-4. They were 12-4 up and they couldn't close it on CT side. Rio rough tournament. I think he had a 0.83 across the tournament. I can check here. Hold on, we can check. Where are the results? I am really bad at this. Hold on. No, this is what the fuck am I doing? Hold on. Players. Okay, I'll just give you this open. Hold on. Rio 0.85. So really rough tournament. Just wasn't delivering, just wasn't having the impact he had in tournaments like Krakow, which I think was one of his best. Ryu hasn't been that bad this year. He's still a prospect I really rate. I rated him when he was on Monty, and it was him and Bemis. That's the duo. It was Bemis and Ryu who were the late round impact players who had so much impact before Afro and Rainwaker. Um, Rainwaker obviously replaced Ryu because 1-for-1 they're almost identical in terms of what their playstyle is, or roles are, I should say, but they're not identical playstyle wise. Rainwaker is better at spraying, has good headshot, but better at spraying, um, and is a bit more passive than Ryu, where I think Ryu likes going for more fights. Um, and then obviously Afro has improved a lot. Like Afro, I think is actually borderline a top 10 opper, not on a top 10 team. So that's a crazy fucking take. I don't think I was expecting to say that ever, but he is. But anyway, not talking about Monty, talking about Astralis. Yeah, Be Quiet tournament. I already mentioned it, but he was not felt at this tournament at all. At PGL Bucharest, he was incredible. He was actually borderline the MVP. Had they won the tournament, in my opinion, he would have been MVP. He was incredible. He had like a 1.2729 going into the grand finals, which was absurd. He was having so much impact, carrying like maps single-handedly. So yeah, Gabby quiet tournament, just a 1.0 I think or 0.99 across the tournament. Again, I'm not like super statistic nerd because I use my eyes to like actually rate how players are doing. I understand that stats don't only matter, but I use stats because they just back up the point, right? Because even though they're an abstraction and all that, okay, never mind. We're not gonna get into that. This is too fucking long for this video. Gamer Legion, great tournament. I really like Gamer Legion, and they're still showing that they can play at a tier 1 level, even with some of the roster changes they've made, and without Ash, right? Ash is no longer with Gamer Legion. Obviously, the news came out about Gamer Legion scamming their players and doing all that stuff. I'm, again, not a fan of that, but I like the players. I like the core, so I will always be a fan of this core of players because this core of players is so fun to watch, and has kind of stolen my heart since 2024 Shanghai. 2024 Shanghai sold me on this on this team and how they play and the fact that they're able to get these upset victories and play at a tier 1 level. Like Gamer Legion has stolen my heart and is still one of my favorite teams to watch. They upset Furia to start the tournament. It was a 3-map affair. PR and Rez both had an incredible map each to get them through. Um, I'm pretty sure Rez carried Nuke really, really hard, and then PR on Mirage was incredible. Like, dude, just multi-kill after multi-kill. He was so hard to like shut down, showing why PR, in my opinion, was almost Rookie of the Year in 2025. If you just took the first season of 2025, PR was Rookie of the Year for me. But obviously, Kiyosuke Maladoy came in, and then at that point, PR fell off, and Gamer Legion got worse, so PR couldn't be the Rookie of the Year. But up until that point, he was Rookie of the Year. He looked incredible. Um, then they upset Astralis. They lose to Navi. Obviously, it's not really important. It was kind of expected, especially with Gamer Legion style, which is a bit more loose. Um, where Snax kind of lets the round breathe. And if you do that against Navi, Navi usually just are going to know that, so they're just going to push and they're going to be aggressive and they're going to try and disrupt you after the 20 seconds, or they'll hold on to util until the 20 seconds because that's typically what Gamer Legion do. They let the 20 seconds, like, let the rounds breathe out a bit and then kind of make a decision. But against Navi, that's not a great approach because if they know you're doing that, they'll just hold util. Um, then they upset Astralis in the quarters, right? Incredible comeback on Inferno. They were 4-12 down. They already won the first map fairly convincingly, but they were 4-12 down. They make it to OT and they close the series. PR, Rez, and Snax all played incredibly, very well. PR, I think, on Overpass was really good. He was just like dominating through Monster. Rez, just good series overall. And then Snax individually played very well. The guy was going for hero AKs and almost winning rounds single-handedly. There's one round where he gets like a triple kill on Inferno, and then Towson just doesn't close the round, or somebody fucked up the round. I forget. I think it was Towson. He just doesn't close the round, which was a bit unfortunate. But Unk still got it, you know? And then they lose at Vitality in the semis, where they get stomped on Mirage, their map pick of 13-1, which was kind of expected. Not that big of a stomp, but I expected a bit of a stomp, right? Because I think the quality in players is just, it's too big, it's too much. When you have like 3 of the best players in the world, I don't think you could ever win against them, ever, because it's that much of a gap. But then Overpass was quite close. I think Snax called a very good game on Overpass. PR was playing really well. On T side, he was able to get so much impact. Hypex had some decent moments. Towson had some good moments. Snax even had some good moments. Like, everybody basically had good moments in this overpass. Even Rez, who was a bit more quiet on this map, but they were almost close to closing the map. They would have went to a third map, but then Vitality win it, and then in OT they just closed it out because they don't lose OTs. And Flamesy had an incredible spray transfer where he kills Hypex in Heaven and then kills Snax in Pit. Um, yeah, it was really unlucky, but PR seems to be reinvigorated, motivated again to play in Tier 1 tournaments. I think problem is if you looked at the results for Gamer Legion in Tier 2, I just don't think PR gives a fuck about Tier 2. I just don't think PR wants to play Tier 2. I think for him, the mouse after hearing the mouse were looking or considering him and then didn't pull the trigger, I think bummed him out a bit. So I think a big reason why you saw PR went from like a 1.10, 1.11, 1.10, 1.09 player to like 1.07, 1.06 player. HLTV rating, right? In tier 2 was because he just doesn't care. I just don't think he wants to play in these tier 2 lands where it's a grind and it's a slug and you're playing all these lands. But Rez continues to show why he's incredible. Um, Rez, I think, is so fucking good. This guy is so mechanically solid. Makes the right decision. Crosshair placement is still elite. Like, I I'm gonna give a hot take. I said this a while ago, and it might not it might be a side grade in theory, but in my opinion, if you put res for Imma, let's say Navi don't get Imma or don't get Frozen, sorry, and they do res for Imma, I think that's actually a firepower upgrade. I don't know if it's gonna actually make the team better because Imma has things like intangibles, like playing a lurker position, giving space to Makaze. He's a secondary caller, right? There's things that Imma does that are intangible and it's hard to like argue. But Rez, I think just raw firepower wise, just hits headshots like crazy amount of headshots. Like the guy is really crisp. But so I said maybe Rez for Imma would be unironically not a bad move. But again, might fuck with the team dynamic. Might be too many differences. Rez is getting older. Rez is like 28 now. So maybe it's not a great idea in theory. And then Snax, unironically, a good caller. I feel like this tournament, he really sold me on his calling. I already thought he was a decent caller, especially on the tail end of G2, where G2, when they didn't have the superstars, Snax had to do more as a caller. And I think Snax, unironically, did show me stuff at the tail end of G2. I was less harsh and critical on Snax, even though I think he shouldn't be on a team like G2. I still thought you put him on a Gamer Legion, he would be good, right? Because I think he is a decent caller who has a good read of the game, who has a good idea of how to use younger pieces. I think he started to understand that towards the end of G2. So I think Snax has really sold me as a caller. He's actually pretty decent. So I'm pretty optimistic about this team going forward. I think they're playing IM Atlanta and the Major, so I expect them to do something there. FaZe, they're back on their bullshit again. Right when I'm fucking done with this team, right when I'm thinking this team is over, this team is done, this team is not going to do anything, they show this result instantly. It's so wild. First map they lose to Navi, but they showed some okay things. I think Jacob on first map was Anubis. Jacob got a lot of openers on CT side, but they were outmaneuvered in the mid rounds by Navi. Navi just always seemed to have a good idea of what FaZe were doing. Because they were moving around in the mid round too much, and Navi were just able to get picks or find bomb sites that were like less guarded, uh, and be able to close out the rounds, right? So that's why it was 13-7. Uh, Ancient was a lot closer of an affair. I think on CT side, FaZe actually started pretty well and was winning a lot of the mid duels. They were just saying like 3 people mid and they were just fucking going. They were saying like they were doing like a run boost to go on Heaven or Shelf, right? And then they were sending 2 people out to swing elbow and they were just taking that fight every single time. And they won it more times than they didn't on CT side. But then on T side, Mikaze kind of shows why he's the best why he's the best ancient player in my opinion, because he was just dominant in mid. Like you just couldn't get past this guy. This guy was landing spray transfer after spray transfer. He was just not losing middle space at all. He was taking it almost single handedly. So yeah. Then FaZe, then versus Furia with Frozen and Brokey carrying both maps they won, D2 and Nuke. Twist on Nuke was incredible. I don't know how the fuck he was finding the gaps he was. He was finding gaps left and right on outside. He was walking in the main. He was like walking credit card. He was walking garage. He was just getting into areas where they have like 3 guys outside. Doesn't matter. He's still finding the gap. Like there's this one round where K Serato is glaive, Yakindar is warehouse, like he's on top of the warehouse thing, and then because K Serato dropped the glaive smoke, Twist is able to walk through from Africa through, wrap main, kill the main guy, and he gets a bomb site for free. And it was wild when I watched it. I was like, how the fuck did this guy just find the perfect gap that like because the glaive smoke just bloomed just far enough to block K Serato's vision of main. So K Serato can't see main. So Twist just walks through and gets a kill on Yuri and they lose the bomb site. It was actually wild when I watched it. I was like, how the fuck? Like, wild. And then obviously they close the series in the most FaZe way possible with a last second defuse and retake, where Brokey and Frozen just win this most bullshit retake I've ever seen. Uh, and then in the quarters they win against G2. Jacob, good map on T2. He made a really important clutch against Sampias, where he made an incredible read on him. He somehow knew Sampias dropped in the elevator after planting the bomb, and read him somehow and just and killed him and won the round. It was actually really impressive from Jacob. It was one of the first times I saw him as like super cerebral in terms of like his read of the things. And then obviously it went 3 map affair. Ancient was like less talkable because not everybody really showed up. Frozen wasn't really there. A lot of people like were a bit quiet. But then Frozen carried on Mirage. Frozen just a lot of impactful trades, a lot of multi kills that just got them into bomb sites or just made the difference in terms of like being able to let somebody else close the round. Um, the 4K on round 23 where they got the G2 got the bomb down, and had the bomb site killed like 2 people. Frozen kills 2 people through a smoke, like while running through a smoke, he sprays 2 people, and then uh, kills a guy triple, and then kills a guy ramp. Like just wins the round single handedly, and then they go T and FaZe bullshit happens again, and they close the round. And then losing to Navi again expected. First map wasn't close, but the second map of Ancient was close. Closer because Twist had a pretty decent time. He was winning clutches. And he was actually doing very well. So in my opinion, NKJ deserves a lot of praise for this tournament for how fast he was able to get this team did the 4 running. I think if you saw FaZe lose, same thing would happen as what it happened with the last roster, where you lose faith very fast and you basically like Frozen. I think at that point is just gone 100%. I don't think Frozen would see anything positive with this team if they went in the same cycle again. But I think considering they had 1 week of practice, this is an incredible result that you got to a semis, you beat Furia, you beat G2. Um, so a lot of praise has to go to NKJ and Twist as well. Twist as a caller has clearly stepped up his individual level since Liquid. Liquid, I was very critical of him. He took a lot of shortcuts. He didn't use his full book of strats, but this time he's using more strats. He doesn't take shortcuts. Individually, still impressive as what he was on Liquid. And he's reading the game better. He's reading the game much better. He's making smarter decisions, and I think I've been really impressed, right? I've been super impressed by how well Twist has actually done with IGLing. I still want to see kicks in. I still want to see Twist as an individual because I think he is still so individually elite that he should keep his. He should be a player for as long as he can before he switches to IGL, in my opinion, because he's still that good. Frozen still great. He had some quieter maps this tournament, but then he had some really good fucking maps, some great maps where he just single-handedly wins the game for them. So obviously, still Frozen, still an elite player. Still want to see him on Navi, but if you can make this FaZe roster work, I'm willing to watch him on this team. I still want to see him win more, but I'm willing to accept it, right? Jacob and Brokey showing signs of life since Kerrigan left. I think rating doesn't look great this event. I think they had like 0.99 and 0.91, which is not great. But they performed better than when Kerrigan was on the roster. I think when Kerrigan was on the roster, this team was a bit disappointing, especially Jacob. It just looked like Jacob was lost, but it looks like Twist has more of an idea on how to use him, and I think he's giving him a bit more freedom. Or maybe he's making this like I think the problem with Jacob was like he was completely left on his own, but I think NKJ is maybe making a game plan for him or like a greater, more structured game plan, so he has an idea of what he needs to do in the start of the rounds on T side, or maybe making the system a bit more easier for him to understand, so he doesn't have to worry about it as much. Because I think the autonomy he was given in Kerrigan's system just didn't work. Like he was, you basically said You're in the middle of the ocean and you have no paddle on this boat. You're like, get out of here. Like, he was just left on his island and he couldn't do anything because he didn't know how to. He's a tier 3 player, right? He was on BetClick. And then Brokey had some bullshit factor come back, right? Which is super nice. I'm glad to see Brokey playing well. I still like Brokey. I still think he's an incredibly fun player to watch, but I just want to see more. I want to see more from him. I know he can deliver more. I've been out on Brokey for a while, but if Brokey is gonna improve in the system, I'm willing to roll the dice and let him play a bit longer. Netu is a better pickup than I thought. I actually didn't rate Netu as a pickup at all. I think the problem I had with Netu is that he was not as cerebral as I would like for an anchor slash lurker, and he's sometimes inconsistent with bomb site holds. I think sometimes with bomb site holds, it sometimes doesn't seem like he gets the one kill that allows his team to like hold or to actually retake. Sometimes it seems like he gets nothing too often. Not all the time. When he's on, he definitely hits the shots, but he's a really sharp player. He's individually very impressive from a raw aim point. Like, the guy hits some crazy shots. He's incredibly fast and sharp, but I actually don't think he's a bad pickup. I think he's a great pickup. NKJ, um, obviously worked with him in the past and ends, so they brought him on, and I think he's been incredibly, I wouldn't say impressive, but he's impressed me a bit, right? Which better than I thought. So if he continues to work on his like thinking of the game, like just I want him to read the game a bit more as an anchor, right? And rely a little less on his aim. It's kind of a similar case I have with Demon, where I think sometimes they're not the smartest players, but they're individually so sharp that they kind of get away with being a bit more not brain dead, but like stupid. It's kind of like Bit versus Rops. Like, the best way I can put it is like Anchor have two archetypes. We're getting into this conversation because I'm already here. Anchors have two archetypes, or anchor lurkers have two archetypes: the sharp ones and the cerebral ones. Now, the cerebral ones are basically people that rely on timings, rely on good positioning, rely on good utility usage, and like plays to be able to bail them, not bail them out of situations, but be able to get kills and like hold bomb sites. So people like Rainwaker, Rops, Heavy God kind of falls into this, but Heavy God is also incredibly sharp. Um, Nilo is like one of those, even though he's not an anchor, but he's a lurker, right? Um, these are people that I rate who have better positioning, and better read of the game to be able to, and are smarter players to be able to get the kills because you don't have to rely on aim as much. And then you have sharp, the sharp anchors slash lurkers, which are people like Tanier, Bit, Netu, Demon. These guys who are incredibly aim reliant, but they're so good aim wise. Like, these guys hit. So like where Rops might position himself better to be able to get 2 kills, and that's why he gets the kill, because he positioned himself better and he's a bit earlier on the timing than somebody expects. Um, these guys are just, they're more mechanically reliant, to the fact where it's like it doesn't matter if their read is a little bit wrong, because they're so individually sharp that they just hit the headshot. So they just win the round because of that, right? And that's what Netu falls in, but I need him to be a bit more cerebral. That's the one thing I need. Anyway, that's my fucking rant. And then Navi and Vitality. I've been fairly, honestly, expected result. I expected Vitality to win. Navi should have closed Nuke. I think for this tournament, Navi could be mostly proud because I think individually they took care of everybody. Everybody they need to win against, they won against convincingly. They were clearly the second best team here. I think Mikaze and Wonderful, especially this tournament, was really good. Bit was solid. Emma had some good maps. Alexi Beast and Blade, obviously, still a great IGL duo that I fucking love. Um, so Navi, no complaints with this team. I still think this team is doing their job. But the one problem I do have is they should have closed Nuke. They had to close Nuke, and if they would have just gotten one map, I would have been fine with it. Losing 3-0, and especially in the fashion they did, was unfortunate. Vitality, I hate this fucking team. They're a fun team to watch. They're not boring, but it's boring when they win everything. That's what pisses me off. I hate when teams win everything. I don't like it. Now, some people will be like, "Oh, but it's the legacy, it's the greatness." That's cool and all, but I'm a fan of the game and a fan of a competitive scene, and I don't care about a player's legacy or a player's thing like that. I don't care about that stuff. Like, to me, that's boring. I don't care. I want to see individuals and teams be competitive against each other. And, like, for instance, 2019 was a really fun year for me because even though Astralis and Liquid were obviously the two strongest, you had two teams who were winning everything, and then you had teams who were winning some smaller or some other tournaments. Like, you had Fnatic in the mix, you had NRG or EG. You had FaZe, who won a tournament. You had ENCE, who, with Alexi B. You had all these fun competitive Renegades. You had all these fun teams you could cheer for, and they could win events when Vitality wasn't at them, or Liquid or Astralis weren't at them, or even when they were, right? Because Astralis, the thing about Astralis is Astralis still lost. But Vitality never seemed to fucking lose. And I hate that. I hate when a team wins everything because it's so boring. Because all I can talk about is like everybody just starts talking about, oh, well, I was the best, right? Like, that's not interesting to me. I don't want to. I just don't want something to be clear cut. This is the best because, in my opinion, discussion like last year, right? Donk to me was the best player of 2025, but a lot of people looked at Zywo and was like, well, look at the accolades. That's cool and all, but now this year there's no discussion, right? Because Donk has fallen off a bit in playoffs and Zywu has gotten better. He's improved from his 2024 form, right? So as a result, the conversation is not there. There's no conversation to be had. Okay, well, is Donk better, even though the results don't show it? Where this year there is no conversation, right? Like, I don't like that, right? On top of that, this team is fucking OP. I don't care what anybody says. It's so overpowered. If you have Rops, Flamesy, Zywu, you will win everything. It doesn't even matter who your fourth guy is. And then on top of that, you have Apex, who individually is good as an IGL. As an IGL, he's really good. Like, the guy is maybe the best utility player I have ever seen. Ever. Like, I made that comment like 6 months ago. I think people are starting to come around to it. And then on top of that, Mezzy is just solid as fucking grand finals. Like, whenever he gets to a grand finals, sometimes he's just the one carrying it. So, I hate this team. Rops, go leave. Join another team. I'm sorry. I'm getting mad because it's actually frustrating watching this team win everything. I want to see Navi win something because I think Navi are such a good team. Um, but just they don't have the firepower. They just don't have the individuals to actually win it because the calling is good enough. Like, some of the individuals are good enough. Like, Makaze and Wonderful are good enough. Bit is even good enough, right? Bit obviously highs and lows sometimes inconsistent. I think he's been more consistent this year. But Emma, not flaming him. I don't even think Emma's a bad player, but I think Frozen would just be so insane on this roster, and Frozen would actually make this team competitive against Vitality, in my opinion. Because Frozen will win a bullshit clutch. Frozen will get a trade frag that maybe Emma doesn't get, right? And Frozen doesn't need as much setup as Emma, right? Frozen's a conservative player, but he's not a player that relies on setup because he can sometimes just hit headshots and just win you rounds, right? So yeah. Anyway, I just ranted at the end about why I hate Vitality. But anyway, let me know what you think about the recap. Do you agree with my assessment of the teams and how they did at this event? Do you not? This video is 38 minutes. Yeah, nobody's watching this, but later. Let me know.